In this powerful near-death experience, a woman shares an extraordinary encounter with Jesus, where she is shown his true face and skin color in vivid detail. As she steps into the presence of the divine, she witnesses a profound revelation that changes her life forever. In a moment of spiritual clarity, Jesus reveals himself in a way never before seen, breaking through cultural depictions to showcase his authentic appearance. This deeply moving experience offers a glimpse of the divine, challenging our perceptions and leaving an indelible mark on her heart and soul. Prepare for a revelation that will leave you awestruck. The turning point, a life or death moment. As a heart surgeon with over 3 decades of experience at the Mayo Clinic, I had encountered my fair share of life and death situations. Every day I dealt with the intricate workings of the human heart, the organ that keeps us alive, but can also betray us in an instant. I had held hundreds of hearts in my hands, and with them, the weight of human lives. Throughout my career, I witnessed numerous patients whose hearts stopped beating, only to come back to life after our medical interventions. I knew the science, the anatomy, and the complex physiology of the heart better than most. But what happened to me on that fateful day changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the nature of reality itself. It was February 3rd, and I was in Phoenix giving a lecture on the newest advancements in heart revival techniques at a medical conference. As a scientist, I prided myself on staying grounded in facts and data. I didn't believe in the supernatural, let alone any divine being. To me, everything had an explanation, grounded in biology, chemistry, and physics. I was a skeptic, a firm believer that there was no God, no higher power. I had spent my career teaching medical students that when the brain stops receiving oxygen, consciousness ceases to exist. I had taught them that when we die, our thoughts, memories, and feelings are simply the last electrical signals from neurons firing. There was no life beyond death, or so I thought. It was during a break in the lecture, as I was chatting with a colleague, that I felt a sharp pain in my chest. As a heart surgeon, I knew exactly what was happening. My heart was having a major heart attack. In that instant, I looked at my Apple Watch, and the heart rate was skyrocketing. My pulse was racing and my breathing became labored. The room seemed to close in on me. My colleague, Dr. James Chen, and I quickly assessed the situation. He understood immediately. Anterior wall myocardial infarction is in progress, I told him. I could feel my body weakening, and within moments, I was slipping into unconsciousness. According to the official medical records from Mayo Clinic Phoenix, I was clinically dead for 17 minutes and 22 seconds. There was no heartbeat, no brain activity, and my body was unresponsive. My colleagues attempted to revive me using defibrillation, a total of 7 times. The medical team later told me that they had been preparing to call it, to declare me gone, when, to everyone's astonishment, my heart began to beat again. But what I experienced during those moments between life and death was something that would forever alter my understanding of the universe, the human soul, and the true nature of reality. Floating above the physical world. The moment my heart stopped, I felt an overwhelming sensation of floating, like I was being lifted out of my body. It wasn't just a physical feeling, but a profound spiritual one. I could see my own lifeless body below, lying on the conference room floor as my colleagues worked feverishly to revive me. Dr. Sarah Williams was calling out for epinephrine, and I could hear the cardiac monitor flatline with a beeping sound that grew fainter and fainter. The room became a blur as I moved away from my physical form. But then, something extraordinary happened. The scene around me began to fade into a soft, radiant light, a light that felt different from any earthly light. This light was alive. It was conscious. It was filled with a love and warmth that was beyond description. The moment I entered the light, all the pain that had gripped me vanished. The agony in my chest disappeared, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace. This peace was all-encompassing, as though I was enveloped in the very presence of something greater than myself. As I moved through this light, I began to hear a voice calling my name. Megan. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, reverberating in my soul. I turned toward the sound, and there he was, Jesus. Not in the way I had always imagined, but in a way that forever shattered my preconceptions. He was not a figure of mythology or art. His face was real, his skin color was different than I had been taught, and his presence radiated love, power, and compassion in a way that I cannot fully describe. The true face of Jesus. I had spent my life as a scientist, focusing on the observable world, the measurable, the provable. I had never given much thought to religious depictions or spiritual beliefs. I believed in the scientific explanations for everything. But when I saw Jesus, everything changed. His appearance was not what I expected, not the typical image of a man with light skin and long, flowing hair. Instead, he had a strong, commanding presence, with features that I can only describe as divine. His skin was of a rich, earthy tone that radiated life and energy. His eyes held a depth of understanding that went far beyond human comprehension. His voice, when he spoke, resonated with an authority that was unlike any voice I had ever heard. It wasn't loud, nor was it soft. It was perfect in every way, clear, calming, and filled with such compassion and love that it reached into the very depths of my soul. As he spoke to me, I understood not just his words, but the meaning behind them. Megan, he said, you have looked for truth through science, which is good, but now you will see greater truths. The moment he touched my forehead, I felt an overwhelming surge of knowledge flood through me. In that instant, I saw the entirety of creation. I saw the Big Bang, the birth of stars, the formation of planets, the evolution of life, and everything in between. It was as if the scientific knowledge I had spent my life accumulating came together to form a unified picture of the universe, a picture that included both the physical and the spiritual realms. I realized, in a way that transcended language, that every heart I had ever worked on, every life I had tried to save, was part of a greater design. This wasn't random. This wasn't just biology or chemistry. It was divine intelligence at work, orchestrating everything in perfect harmony. A journey through Jesus' life. But the most incredible part of this experience came when Jesus showed me his life on earth. He took me through what appeared to be a window in time, allowing me to witness scenes from his life, scenes that were not recorded in any history books. I saw him as a child, speaking to his mother Mary, on the rooftop of their home in Nazareth. I saw his tenderness, his awareness of his divine calling, and his mother's love and concern for him. These moments, so intimate and personal, were beyond anything I had ever imagined. I was taken back to the early days of his ministry before any miracles had been recorded. He met a family whose young son was dying of leukemia. Instead of healing the boy immediately, Jesus spent 3 days with the family, teaching them about the deeper meaning of suffering and divine love. When he finally healed the child, it wasn't just a physical healing, it was a transformation of the entire family, an awakening to the truth of God's love. The most profound moments came as I witnessed his crucifixion, not from a distance, but from his perspective. I saw the unimaginable physical pain he endured, but more than that, I felt his mind, his heart, and his soul focused on something much greater than his own suffering. I felt the weight of his mission, the cosmic responsibility of taking on the sins and suffering of the entire world. His eyes never lost that incredible mixture of authority, compassion, and love, even in the darkest moments of his life. A glimpse of heaven and hell. As if the encounter with Jesus wasn't profound enough, He took me to see both heaven and hell. What I saw in hell was not what I had been taught to expect. It wasn't a place of fire and torment, but rather a state of being completely cut off from the love and truth of God. The souls I saw there were not tortured by a demonic force. They were trapped in their own darkness, separated from the light. Their suffering was self-inflicted, the result of choices they had made that kept them from experiencing the fullness of God's love. In heaven, I saw something entirely different. It wasn't a place with clouds and harps, as some might imagine. Instead, it was a state of pure peace, understanding, and love. I felt the deepest sense of connection to everything, past, present, and future. It was a moment of infinite clarity and joy, where every question was answered, every fear was erased, and every soul was at rest. The bigger truth. As a heart surgeon, I had spent my life studying the physical world, the mechanisms of life and death, the intricacies of the human body. But what I saw in that moment showed me that the physical world is just a shadow of a deeper reality. The scientific knowledge I had spent decades accumulating was only a glimpse of something much greater. The laws of physics, the principles of biology, and even the equations of quantum mechanics were just approximations of a higher truth, a truth that transcended the material world. I returned to my body with a renewed understanding of life, death, and the universe. I had experienced the divine in a way that no science could explain. And though I am still a scientist, I now know that there is much more to reality than what we can measure. The scientific method will always have its place, but it must be understood in the context of a greater, unseen truth, one that cannot be measured but can only be experienced. What happened to me that day in Phoenix reshaped everything I thought I knew. I had crossed the boundary between life and death, and in doing so, I glimpsed the true nature of existence. I saw the world as it truly is, interconnected, divine, and filled with love. And though I will continue to practice medicine and teach my students about the wonders of science, I will never forget the greater truths I witnessed. The heart is not just a pump, it is a vessel for something much greater, something beyond our understanding. And that is the greatest truth I will ever know. The divine encounter, a life-changing experience. As a heart surgeon with decades of experience in the medical field, I had always approached life from a rational, analytical perspective. My career was built on the principle that every patient's condition could be understood and treated using established scientific principles, and every phenomenon in the human body had an explanation rooted in biology, chemistry, and physics. In my training, I had become accustomed to making quick, precise decisions in life and death situations, relying on the wisdom and knowledge that had been passed down through generations of medical practitioners. But there are moments in life that challenge everything we think we know about reality. It was in one of these moments during an unexpected heart attack that I was thrust into an experience so profound and life-altering that it left me questioning everything I had believed about the universe, life, death, and the very nature of existence itself. What happened to me during those precious minutes, when my heart ceased to beat, led me to encounter a presence I now know as Jesus. This experience transcended any medical training I had received and opened my eyes to a truth far greater than I could have ever imagined. A shift beyond the physical, entering the divine. It all began in a conference room, surrounded by fellow doctors, as I was giving a lecture on the latest advancements in heart surgery. The room was filled with colleagues, all eager to hear the insights I had accumulated over years of performing complex surgeries. But as I was speaking, something changed inside of me. The pain started suddenly, a sharp, searing ache in my chest. Within moments, I recognized the symptoms of a heart attack, one that was quickly accelerating in intensity. My pulse spiked, my breathing became shallow, and the world around me began to close in. In those moments, the scientific knowledge that had been my lifelong companion seemed to slip away, replaced by a raw, instinctual awareness of the gravity of the situation. I was aware that this was not just a minor health scare. I was dying. I was rushed to the medical team, who immediately started working on me, using the tools of modern medicine that had saved countless lives before. But despite their best efforts, my heart stopped. The monitor flatlined, my body went limp, and I entered into a state of unconsciousness. But it wasn't the end, not yet. In that moment, when my heart had ceased beating and my body lay still, I was drawn into what I can only describe as a divine reality, a realm beyond anything I had ever imagined. It was as though my consciousness was detached from my physical form, floating in an expansive, timeless void. What I experienced in that moment was nothing short of a revelation, one that I am compelled to share with the world. The supreme presence, the heart of reality. As I drifted further from my physical body, I encountered a presence that I can only describe as the very center of all existence. It was a presence that radiated perfect truth, perfect love, and infinite wisdom. It was as though this being was the source of all creation, the very foundation of reality itself. But what amazed me most was not just the sheer power of this presence, but its deep and personal connection to every individual soul. This presence was not distant or abstract. It was intimately connected to every thought, every prayer, and every emotion in the universe. It was as if every moment in time, the joys, the sorrows, the victories, and the struggles were eternally present to this consciousness. I felt, in that instant, that every prayer ever uttered, every tear ever shed, and every celebration of life was eternally held in the mind of this being. The love and compassion that emanated from this presence were beyond anything I had ever experienced. It was a love that knew no limits, no boundaries, and no conditions. This was not a human love. It was something far greater, an all-encompassing love that embraced every corner of existence. This presence, this supreme being spoke to me. Its voice was not a physical sound, but a communication that resonated directly within my being. It didn't use words in the way we understand language, but instead conveyed meaning in a way that transcended human understanding. I understood in that moment that this being was not just the creator of the universe, but also the sustainer of all life. Time and space, the very fabric of reality itself, emanated from this divine consciousness. I came to understand something profound about the nature of reality. Everything we experience as physical reality, our bodies, the universe, the laws of physics, was a manifestation of this divine mind. What we perceive as the passage of time, the limitations of space, and the solidity of matter were all products of this higher consciousness. They were not separate from it, but were intricately woven into the very essence of existence. It was as though our world was a reflection, a projection of the divine mind itself. The appearance of Jesus, a glimpse into the divine. Then, as if the very fabric of reality itself was rearranged, I was confronted with the figure of Jesus. The description of his appearance is something that many would find difficult to believe, but I can assure you, with all certainty, that it was real. The image of Jesus that most people carry in their minds is that of a man with long, flowing hair and a serene, gentle face, often portrayed in traditional European depictions. But what I saw before me was nothing like those paintings. Jesus stood in front of me, and the first thing that struck me was his presence. He was of average build, not overly muscular, but his body was strong and athletic, the result of a life spent walking, working, and serving. His stature was commanding, not in the way that someone might expect from a king or conqueror, but in a way that emanated both humility and authority. His presence seemed to fill the entire space, as though he was both here and everywhere at once. His skin was a light olive tone, not pale or white as often depicted in art, but a warm, honey-like hue that seemed to glow with an inner light. It was as though his skin itself was a reflection of the divine light that surrounded him. It wasn't the color of sunburned skin, but rather the soft, radiant glow of someone who had spent time both in the shade and the sun, someone whose skin was alive with the light of eternity. The glow was not artificial but intrinsic, as though he were glowing from within. His hair was another striking difference from traditional depictions. It was not the dark brown or black hair typically attributed to Jesus, nor the pale blonde seen in some European renditions. His hair was light brown with golden highlights that shifted and changed in the light, almost as if it were alive. It flowed naturally, falling in waves to just above his shoulders, and when the light moved through it, it shimmered in shades of honey gold and amber. His facial features were perfectly balanced, striking in their natural beauty. His forehead was noble and proportionate, his eyebrows expressive but not overly thick, and his nose was perfectly formed, straight, well-defined, and fitting his face with precision. But it was his eyes that left the greatest impact on me. I had seen countless eyes in my lifetime as a surgeon, but never had I encountered eyes like his. They shifted between warm brown and deep, penetrating blue depending on how the light caught them. They held an incredible depth, a vast reservoir of wisdom and compassion that seemed to peer directly into my soul. There was a knowingness in his eyes, an understanding of every thought, every emotion, every part of my being. Yet there was no judgment in his gaze. Instead, there was only love, profound love that seemed to encompass the entirety of my existence, with all my flaws and imperfections. It was as if he understood me in a way that no one else ever could. But instead of condemnation, there was only acceptance, compassion, and mercy. His eyes were not just a window into his soul, they were a window into the very heart of the universe itself. His beard was full and well-groomed, matching the color of his hair, framing his face perfectly. His lips, when he smiled, seemed to light up the entire universe. It was not a smile of politeness or convenience. It was a smile of profound joy, a smile that carried with it the weight of eternity. When he smiled, it was as though the entire cosmos rejoiced and all the darkness in the world was driven away. The message, a revelation of love and truth. As he looked into my eyes, he spoke. His voice was not just heard by my ears, but felt deep within my soul. "Tell them," he said, "I am more real than their doubt, more present than their fear, and more loving than their shame." In that moment, everything in me shifted. I understood with a clarity that transcended words why I had spent my life as a healer of hearts. I understood the deeper purpose of my existence. Jesus showed me that time, as we understand it, is not a linear progression, but a dimension that exists within a greater reality, the eternal. All prayers, all moments of joy, all experiences of sorrow exist within this eternal dimension, and they are eternally present to God. It was as though he revealed to me the very nature of existence, that everything we experience is part of a divine, eternal flow, and our lives are far more interconnected than we could ever comprehend. Then, as he blessed me, I felt myself being pulled back through the light. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air, lying on the floor of the conference room surrounded by shocked colleagues. The cardiac monitor was showing a perfect sinus rhythm, better than my normal baseline, and I knew without a doubt that I had been touched by something beyond this world. The aftermath, a new understanding of life. Since that experience, everything has changed. I no longer see the world in the same way. I still practice medicine, still teach and mentor students, but my understanding of life, of consciousness, and of the universe has expanded beyond the material. The experience I had opened my eyes to the fact that the physical world is only a surface reality, a projection of a much deeper divine truth. And while I continue my research into near-death experiences, seeking to better understand the relationship between science and spirituality, I know deep in my heart that consciousness does transcend death. Jesus, with his radiant presence, his glowing skin, his shifting eyes, and his profound love, is more real than anything I can touch or see in this physical world. He knows every detail of our lives, every struggle, every joy, and he loves us with a completeness that our minds can scarcely comprehend. For those who have had similar experiences or who are unsure about the reality of such encounters, know that you are not alone. What I encountered is not just a mystical vision or a fleeting dream. It is the reality that underlies all of existence.